Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, you are on Ginger Chick Rehab, where I love to go thrifting. I love to look for secondhand finds, not only to decorate my house with, to resell, but I love to make items over. And I am blessed enough to be able to do some of this hunting with my husband, Chris. So in today's video, Chris actually found and got his hands on this older style wooden wagon. And it's beautiful. But it was probably more of a utility wagon in its later use in life. So I want to make it into pretty home decor. So Chris and I are tag teaming this piece and sharing with you all the process of how we're getting it from a garden utility wagon into some beautiful home decor. What is it about wagons? Is it that it reminds you of your childhood, running with a wagon, riding in a wagon? I don't know. I'm just always attracted to them, and especially these old wooden type ones. And you can tell that it probably had rails on it. That's where all the hardware came from, but I don't care that they were missing. I think it tells a story of, well, the story at the end of its life, I think, was a garden utility usage that has been well loved and well used. So when we purchase this, you know, sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm just going to buy it and resell it. And the more that I had it in my presence, I'm like, no, I can do this better. So you can tell that it had been spray painted, maybe on purpose or accidentally, I'm not really sure. So some of the hardware has been coated. We got a few different colors. They're square, square nuts, and they are rusted. There is a whole bunch of them, and they are rusted, and we weren't even sure if they'd even come off very easily, but there is a lot of them to remove. So luckily, happily, that my husband Chris is here to help, because, you know, when it comes to work, never shoo away somebody that is willing to help you. Not as if we didn't have enough of the bracket pieces to remove, really to give this the best paint job we can. I'm not going to restore this hardware. I'm just going to clean it up, make it beautiful again, try to get some of the paint off some of the metal, so we decided the best is to probably remove as much of the hardware as we possibly can to preserve it, not to accidentally get paint over it, to save like trying to tape it off. I didn't say it was going to be an easy task, but yeah, there's a lot of hardware on this little wagon. And as I said earlier, a lot of the metal, rusty, crusty goodness hardware that I love has like random paint splatters on it. So that's just not going to do. So, yep, even the handle has to come off. Yeah, so hopefully we will remember where all these pieces and parts go back together when we go to put it back together. And hopefully none of the pieces, because they're so rusty, break. Not every one of the nuts wanted to come loose. A little WD-40 to hopefully loosen up some of that rust. But I don't know, y'all. I think it is well worth it. Probably a project I'm admitting that I probably could not have taken apart on my own. I might have had to figure out how to tape it all off, because I couldn't get a lot of those to move. Or apparently I probably would have used a whole bottle of WD-40. Of course, the wood has swollen, swelled over time, so a lot of the bolts didn't want to come out. So I needed some brute strength on this project. this little nut and bolt was probably the hardest to remove because you kind of had to vice grip the bolt itself, because every time you went around and tried to loosen up the nut, you just swung, you know, you just spin around and around the bolt. So yeah, I probably would have just had to leave it, but Chris was determined to get a hold of that bolt somehow with some vice grips, be able to turn that bolt. So I'm just imagining how hard it was to get off. How the heck are we going to get it back on? After a few hours of work, which I think was well worth it, I don't know if you all think that it was or not, but this will be so much easier to paint now, figure out how I want to leave the wheels, get everything back into working order. So yeah, well worth it, I think anyway. I'm going to let the hardware sit with hot water, Murphy's oil soap. I can't tell you that I think that that spray paint, it's definitely a spray paint. I don't think it'll come off because it looks like it's on top of the rust. So it wasn't on the original metal, but we'll give it a try. That is just for the bracket system. The rest of it, I'm just going to clean by hand. I'm going to leave the rusty patina because I love rusty patina. I think it's gorgeous. So I'm just going to hand clean a lot of these other parts just as best as I can. I don't like the paint splatter on the handle. I know it wasn't going to come off, and if I try to like pry it off because it's a big old chunk, you know, I'm just going to injure the patina, the metal itself. So you just have to kind of envision what you want your final look to look like, and how much, like Chris did offer, he could have taken a grinding wheel, but that would have taken all the rusty patina off and brought it back down to the metal, which I don't want to do. So I'm just going to do my best just getting it cleaned off from, you know, like the first layer of dirt anyway. And as I'm assessing the wheels, I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like, I want to leave some of that rusty, crusty goodness. I needed to see how much was just actual dirt and how much was rust, and is there any paint splatters anywhere on the wheels, which we can see some yellow. There's some yellow on the black part of the wheel. You know, and then is everything in working order? Is it spinning freely? If you want to pull it by the handle, will everything, you know, proceed on moving? You know, part of cleaning is kind of assessing your item, seeing like, and then I'm still trying to figure out how I want to finish this part of the wagon off. I couldn't scrub the yellow paint off, but I know that your eye is drawn to it. You see that automatically. So I thought, okay, these are really those hard wheels. Can I just take a little bit of sandpaper, like some 220 grit, and sand that yellow paint off? And so far, so good. And now that I have all those pieces and parts clean, we're going to go ahead and get the body cleaned. And I'm going to use like kind of like my weeding tool, which this is just one from the Dollar Tree store. It does come in handy. Like I need to pry off like stuff, I don't know what it is, stuff that's in between the two slats of wood, work it out. You know, I want to get all the spaces nice and clean. And sometimes you just have to pick things out to get them to come out. So I do have a method to my madness, why I'm scrubbing every little piece. I'm trying to get any of that rust build out from the screws and the, you know, the areas where it screws in together. So hopefully when we go to reattach everything, it's a little bit cleaner, that everything will go on a little bit easier is my hope. And this is the side when I knew I could not keep this as is. So I think when Chris bought this at the auction, I did too. I didn't see the white side. I just saw the beautiful green. And I'm like, hey, that's a grab and go. Just clean it up and, you know, resell it. But then when we, really got it home, looked at it, and are like, oh, it's got 2 different color sides, and one of the sides is a half and half. So yeah, that for me, I love project pieces anyway. I love challenges, and so does Chris. So here we go, we're doing a wagon. And would you ever have thought a picking tool would come in so handy, getting all these little whatevers out of the crevices? I just want to make sure that it's really clean. There's not anything left behind. Picking it out, sucking it up with the vacuum, taking the air compressor, like using the power of the air to hopefully blow out anything I missed. So I felt like this paint wasn't going to come off. Like I said, it was spray painted on the top of rust, rust is just a porous surface. It's different if it was just the metal and then had paint over it, but since it's bonded into the rust. But I wasn't too worried. I got it nice and clean because if you watch my channel long enough, you know I love Rusty Crusty, and I know how to make things rusty crusty because Dixie Belle has a wonderful product. So I've got the ones that are all fine, and I'm going to leave those alone. I'm going to leave those as is. They don't need any more rust. They are naturally rusty on their own. But the others, I am going to use the rusty patina on there. So Dixie Belle's iron paint to the rescue. So want to make sure when you are doing your iron paint, you want to make sure that you get all those yummies off the bottom. So stir it up every time you go to use it. And I use an old Dollar Tree stencil brush that has been well loved. The bristles are all just frayed out, but it's perfect. So I only do 1 coat of the iron paint, but I do a pouncing, dabbing technique. So I'm not like brushing it on. I'm not getting a smooth paint job because rust isn't smooth. It is bumpy. It is raised. It's got a lot of texture. So as you see, I'm just pouncing away. And then I always go back through and make sure that I don't have any like slides or anything like that, like, or the brush has slid and made a brush stroke. I just want to make sure it looks pouncy. Luckily, there's no need to do the underneath of these. They weren't spray painted. They still have their natural, beautiful rust on the underneath, so I just need to do the top of them. And then I do not wait for my paint to dry. As soon as I get the paint on, I am taking the green Dixie Belle activating spray, and I'm spraying it right on top of it. Now, this is just a technique that works for me. I know there's other ways, and I probably don't follow the directions, but I'm just sharing what works for me and that I love. So now I had to decide what to do with the wheels because, like, they're rusty, crusty goodness, but they have that inner circle that's beautiful metal rusty crusty, and I'd really like to emphasize it, but I don't want to paint on the wheel. So unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way, I'm going to take the time, since I got the yellow paint off the wheel, I don't want to get any more paint on it. I'm going to tape off the entire wheel and the center part of the wheel because the rust on each one of the reels on the round part, the most part of it, isn't evenly rusted. And I did a little bit of researching on wagons that a lot of them did have red wheels. So I'm like, okay, we can do this. We can tape off this and kind of emphasize that beautiful metal in the middle and save the wheel. So the one thing about this restoration, I'm going to call it, is I don't want to take away the beautiful aged patina. And if you've watched my channel long enough, you know that I am a fan of distressing and the age and trying to make something clean and new, but something still look old. So I don't want to take a sander to this piece, but there's the hugest glob of paint that has soaked into the wood on that handle that I'm going to try to chip off as much as I possibly can. And I know that like using a power sander would be like, whew, and one and done, but I don't want to risk going down too far and going into like a newer wood. I don't want that beautiful patina of this wood. I don't want to risk that. I am going to have to use a little bit of sandpaper probably towards the end, but for right now I'm going to try to pick off as much of this paint as I can. And my reasoning, one, because it's a glob of paint, and two, I know that the paint that I'm going to use is not going to adhere to it. This is trying to keep something looking old, so there's not going to be any primer, nothing to help it adhere to that white paint. It is just going to be, I want it to look like it had been used. I don't want it to look brand spanking new, but I do want to, like, this is the biggest glob anywhere on this thing. So I have the perfect paint color for this wagon. Sweet Pickins has a red wagon, but I don't have enough. I don't think I have enough of it. And I don't want to like start painting on something and not think, you know, like, ah, shoot, you know, and then run out. So I'm going to add some of the cherry pie in with it just to make sure that I have enough for the whole project. I really didn't ever like give a thought that I was going to be painting this, but when you're inspired, when you're looking at a piece in your stash and you're like, I feel like doing this today, kind of thing, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, I saw that I had that paint, but when I didn't open it up, like when we started the project, that I wasn't going to have enough, but I still have some red to mix in with it. So now I could take the time and I could tape off every single one of these bolts that's left in there, which doesn't sound like fun. I could Vaseline them, kind of, maybe. Or I can just take a smaller brush and take my time and go around each one of the bolts. I don't want to paint them. I think this is the character of the piece, those rusty, crusty bolts that are left in. I'm going to be matching all the other hardware up with that, so I want to take the time to leave them unpainted. So that's why I'm questioning, is this a restoration or this is just, it's just a fix. It's just a paint job. It's just. But to me, it's well worth the time. And the sad thing about it is this is speed up motion, y'all. It took me that long to paint in between, but I didn't care because I knew what the vision of my end results was going to be. and I wanted to do it right. Now on the bottom, as you saw when I was painting in the slats in the inside that had already been painted green, I want to leave the character of the older wood. So if I could really take my time and not get any paint on the bottom, you know, a lot of times you tape off and then the paint still, you are overconfident that the tape is protecting, and so you just kind of hit the tape and then you pull the tape off and you're like, oh man, paint went underneath that tape. And it doesn't matter what tape I've used, you know, it just, that happens. So sometimes it's like, I love these little fan brushes. I have so much control. And the other brush that I get, I always forget the name of it. I love the brushes that I use, you know, and then I have the little bitty one that was going around, which is just a regular, like, acrylic type of paintbrush. You just have to love what you work with, and I rather have minimal paint on a brush I can control and move my paint around. I rather like dip it back in and get more paint out. You know, everything's about a personal preference, and I find painting relaxing. You know, I'm even going to go around the little nails and the screws that are left in there because they're rusty, crusty goodness, and I love rusty, crusty goodness, and I want them to show off. I don't know if this was a store-bought piece. I don't know if this was a handmade piece. I don't know the story, but I would like some of the age to show through. Because of that, this is going to be one coat, so it's well worth the time. I'm not going to have to go back and do the second coat on there. The wood is dry. I didn't pre-sand it. I didn't try to get anything off whatsoever. You know, a lot of times these older pieces, when you see older furniture pieces, that's the patina we like. We like those layers of paint. That's what we're doing as crafters and creators, is we're layering paint up. So why take the paint off if I want to see underneath colors? They're already there. So one coat is all I'm going to be doing on this piece. Yeah, isn't that funny? I'm like, really? I did all that work and there was still a little fuzzy left behind. How did that get to stay in there? But yes, so well worth the time. Y'all may not think that it is, but I do. know, you're all like, why are you painting? Why are you not laying that down, Yvonne? Why are you painting it like this? Well, if you can see the screws, they are countersunk into the wood. So the chances of, like, if I had it flat, the paint might want to pool in that, and then it's just the way I could hold my brush. And then the same thing where the two pieces of wood meet, I don't want to chance paint running into that and then ruining what's in the inside. You know, I'm trying to keep that wood in there. So there's always a method to my madness. It may not always make sense to everybody else, but we just do what works for us. And if it's easier for you to lay something down and control your paint from running, then that's what you do. And now it's to the wheels, and all I did was clean the wheels. I did not spray them with anything. That rusty crusty is going to be so porous that it's going to soak the paint right in, just like the hardware, you know, that I couldn't get the green and the white paint off of. It's just going to absorb right in, so I don't have to worry about it, but it's going to have that nice character of the texture of the rust underneath. So yes, I got some inspiration for my paint from Googling old wooden wagons. That's where I knew that it was, like a lot of the wagon wheels were painted. But I also wanted to add some type of wording onto the sides because, yeah, why not? It's going to be hopefully a pretty decor piece and spend the rest of its life or its new life inside somebody's house or on somebody's covered front porch. I'm hoping. Yeah, I hope it doesn't have to be a work utility wagon again, but who knows. Anyway, so this was, I just, Googled old wooden wagons and this is what came up. So I'm just looking for some inspiration of what type of wording I want to do because I'm just going to make a stencil using my Cricut. So when I was cleaning this piece on the hubcap part of the wheel, we're going to call that sounds good. We're going to call that, it had radio something on it. It didn't necessarily say radio flyer, but the rust was so like in there that I couldn't make out the second word. So I was trying to like look up like radio flyer, like wording, and I saw town and country. So that's a nice little primitive saying, country saying to go with this wagon. And then, so I type it out on my text, and then it's the picking of the font. Okay, what font do I want? There's so many fonts. How do we choose? And why, when you're picking fonts, you have it as a certain size, and then you put the font in, and you're like, oh my gosh, and now that is like 1,000,000 miles long. Why does it do that? And so for me to get the real visual of it, then I got to spend the time to make it smaller to the size that I need it to be on my project to really get the good visual. So there I am, I can't like grab it. I don't know where in space that it is, but I have to go up to my unlock feature and then start scrolling down to get it to be more of a size. Why does it always enlarge like that? Do I have a feature I need to set it on? If you are Cricut users, let me know. Why does it do that when you're searching for fonts? You saw if I tried to shorten it by like just pushing in on my square, then it like puts one word after the other. There's got to be a setting or something. It shouldn't be this difficult to just type out a couple words. And then, of course, I spent all that time doing it and then I didn't actually love the font. So I just went with something more simple, but I do need to make duplicates because I want to write this on both sides. When it comes to transfer tape, I really love the transfer tape that has the grids on it. That way I can line it up on the top of my lettering. It just makes it a little bit easier when you're going to apply it to your object that you're transferring it to, that you're already started off with a level area. Now for my stencil color, I'm just going to use the Fusions Coal Black paint. Fusions has paint, primer, and top coat all in one. And the thing that we got going on here is that I didn't seal my milk paint in. I don't want this to be a pristine paint job. And I know that since I didn't seal my paint and that I have other paint underneath, that probably when I pull that stencil up, it may be a hot mess, or it may just be this distressing I'm looking for. It's just the chance I was willing to take. And I'm sure the other you that do this are like, you didn't seal it in. What are you doing? Anyway, so you'll just have to wait and see what mess or what creation I might have created. Even though I'm using a heat gun, I have it just on the air setting. It's just drying that paint, helping release the sticky a little bit, and we'll just see. I don't care if it pulled off some of the paint by any means, and you can see where some of the white paint is peeking through, because I'm going to be sanding the piece anyway to give it distressing, so that's just even better if it did pull a little bit of the paint off. I know, like the rule of thumb is usually you would like have sealed, like, because milk paint is not on there permanently, or, as any project goes, you just, do what you're inspired to do and then go from there and see if it works or not. So really, it didn't take off a whole lot of paint. I was actually surprised, but my stencil is raised, so I was planning on sanding it down anyway. So I just have 220 sandpaper. I'm just making sure that my stencil is nice and smoothed down. Some of the lettering is coming off to give it that more aged look, and then I'm just sanding the rest of the piece, because I knew that some of this would be peeking through some of that white paint, but that's the layering I was looking for. I didn't even have to paint any other colors underneath it because it was already there. The 220 is giving me the distressing that I'm looking for, because it's going down into the natural wood, showing some of the paint, showing some of the natural wood. But then I'm also going over the entire piece with steel wool also, because that's going to smooth everything down. I'm going to wax this to really bring out the paint color, and steel wool just will make sure that it gets into like all the milk paint has been sanded, giving it that nice smooth texture, and also the evenness of the porosity of the paint itself. So where you'd missed like sanding, your wax will not take evenly. If that's the look you're going for, then that's fine. But I'm really looking for a little bit smoother of a job. So I was sanding until I got the other side, where then I proceeded to stencil. And you would have kind of thought that the white paint that was a little bit shinier would have pulled up more, but it was actually the green paint that it didn't really adhere to. So that might be a little bit too distressed. So I'm going to go back in. I want you to be able to see the wording that I stenciled. You'll have that it happens. I'm not terribly worried. For this very reason is why I always just put my paint in a Ziploc and never wash it, empty the leftover paint out, especially since I have milk paint that you can't just put the lid on and close and just grab off the shelf. I do not clean my paint supply out until my project is completely done. Oh, would you look how beautiful the rust patina turned out? Did you think it would be like this? Did you think it would match as well? I know it's not a perfect match, but it doesn't look like painted hardware anymore. That really bright yellowy orange color is going to tone down once I spray it with a couple coats of weather defense to seal this in. And I know a lot of people were like, you didn't prime first, you didn't put a bond agent, they always are telling me what I didn't do. There's just a handful. But this system has worked for me. I have not had any problems with my paint coming off, y'all. So I'm just going to stick with what works for me. Okay, so now it's time to, yeah, some of the paint even blew off, but that's okay. At least you can see my wording a little bit more. I wanted you to be able to make out the black from the green in the wording. So I'm just taking the air compressor, getting all the sanding dust off that I created from sanding this nice and smooth, and we're going to be using Jolie's black wax to bring out the red paint color. I love it. Now I go back and forth between the Jolie's wax and the Fusions black wax, but for reds, there's something about the Jolie's that grab a little bit more onto my red. That is why I choose this one. It's just a personal preference. You know, when you use a product, you just kind of figure out what works best for you. And it may seem a little bit heavy, and I'm not leaving it that way because I'm going to then take some of the natural clear wax from the Homestead line, which is from the Painted Heirloom, and we're going to blend this and really get this worked into that red paint. It is just going to make this color pop. I did wax right over that hardware. That's giving it a protected coat. It's bringing it back to life. So I didn't have to worry about any of the hardware that was left on there. But I am going to put just the natural wax, bring this inside of this, that beautiful patina wood back to life, giving it a much needed drink. It's really dry wood. And that'll also help just clean it up a little bit more. And you can tell that it's just absorbing it right in. But then after I get the whole wax on, I will go back through, because I notice like sometimes like clear wax, when there's like crevices and like around the hardware and stuff, I will go and try to clean out those areas because it'll leave like a white chalky look, and I don't want that look. I just want it to look like it's old wood. When it came to like trying to steel wool the metal, I was worried that metal would wipe off differently, and I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm just going to have to not sand the paint on the metal, because I feel like I was just going to lift the paint right off and get back down to that rust. Though I love the rust. So we're just going to go ahead and wax right over it. It will give it a different look. If you don't sand the milk paint, it does give it a different look. But look at how that hubcap I don't know, is that what we would call it, as a hubcap? Just pops with that red. So it just brought out that feature, gave it that 3 with the black tone and the new red paint. And yeah, see how the wax itself, the same system I did it just pops and protects and brings that rusty crustiness back to life. Not going to try to wax the whole mechanisms themselves. So after getting the wax on, it's still a little bit on the wet side. I'm going to use some of the Weather Defense metal spray to seal in the rust, to protect it, to just, so like if somebody's using it and it gets wet, you don't have to worry about rust dripping or anything like that. It's just sealing in that metal. And I usually will do 2 coats. Getting closer to being able to put the wagon back together. I cannot forget the handle. I just painted the red. It was green. And I know when I go to sand where that white was, you could just, the paint sands right off the white, but it's okay. So yeah, same thing. Sand it with the 221st, then go over it with steel wool to give it the same patina look as the entire wagon itself. Okay, it is time. It is time to start putting all these brackets back on. Oh, was that a job? Yeah, so after like starting to put them on, I realized that every bracket was an individual. There's no exact same size. So I just had to keep testing out which bracket fits. Some were shorter, some were longer, and even though I thought, oh, this one's a little bit longer, you're not bending these. Plain and simple, you're not bending them to fit. You just had to find the right bracket that went around the right bolts. Holy cow! But I will say, like when I went to put the nuts on, everybody's always worried about, I mean, not everybody, but some people will comment like, that's not going to last. You didn't seal it properly. I used a metal wrench to put the nuts back on, and my paint did not come off. I have a metal on metal, and my paint was on there, and this is all on the same day. I didn't even let it cure overnight before doing this. So I did what I could do without Chris's help, and then I needed his help because that vise thin, the nut, yeah. And then on the handle, the wood had swollen, so I could not get the bolts back in there. So he's just drilling those out a little bit more. So hopefully that the bolts slide it. I mean, you don't want it so loose that it's sloppy, but I mean, and then you can't keep hammering on these poor things. Yeah. And then like every bolt, of course, is a different size. So I was like, okay, I didn't take the handle apart. So I was like, okay, do you remember? Do you remember which bolt goes into which space? And I actually fixed the paint on the handle itself by doing the patina over that too, just covering up the one spot. Well, it worked amazing. Oh my gosh, I need to get a close-up of that for you all.
On the threads, when I was hammering them off, it kind of mushroomed them in, so the threads are overlapping. So you got these taps and dies that I can put on there and to start the thread again. See how this screws on then?
So thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed Chris and I tag teaming, because I don't know if I could have got all those nuts and bolts off that were rusted on there. Oh, and boy, was that a jigsaw puzzle to get it back together, because we didn't film every little nut and bolt that we took out. So anyway, what did you think? Yes, somebody, I don't know what the original color was or if it was a homemade piece, and it probably had those sides on it. But it's beautiful now. It's not two-toned. It's got new life. You can bring it in. You can set it on. You can take it back outside if you want to, but I'm hoping that somebody who buys it wants it for their beautiful home and to put some fun home decor in it. So thanks again for watching today's video. Give me a quick comment down below. Do you have a wagon sitting around that you're like, hey, maybe I should redo my wagon, or have I gave you inspiration if you're ever out and about and you see one that's a little bit worse for wear? So again, thanks for watching today's video, and as always, if you're part of our YouTube family, thank you so much. And if you're new and you're checking out our channel for the first time and you liked what you saw, please hit that subscription button along with the notification bell so you know when we've uploaded a new video, and we will see you next time, guys, and you can see what we're up to. Bye.